They weren't the first to do this. It was Blake Lively, it was Ryan Reynolds, this was their strategy, and now they kind of want to put the genie back in the bottle. But guess what? The genie does not want to go back in the bottle.
Ryan Reynolds. This was his strategy, and now he somehow wants to take everything back. But guess what? The genie doesn't want to go back into the bottle. Ryan Reynolds completely lost it when Fox News criticized him for firing a makeup artist, proving that he is just as useless, self-absorbed, and controlling as Blake Lively.
A source that says he had quite an experience demanding his makeup artist show up or get fired. I'll share that story for you.
They exposed his bad behavior and put him in his place because, to be honest, he has no right to fire people just because he can't control his anger.
That's so gross and weird and manipulative. Even if it's true, it's so just, this movie somehow was a magnet for awful people.
Ryan Reynolds, who likes to portray himself as Hollywood's funny guy, was harshly criticized by Fox News. In reality, he's far from the charming and comedic Deadpool character he projects. Instead, he's a power-hungry, insecure, and controlling individual who believes he holds dominion over Hollywood.
Ryan Reynolds, by all accounts, seems like a great guy. He is acting. By all accounts, he is a total pain.
If you think this sounds too extreme, let me tell you about the time he threw a massive tantrum and attempted to end a makeup artist's career, simply because she wasn't available for a reshoot. Yes, we're talking about a full-blown meltdown from a Hollywood dictator all over a little foundation and powder.
Those guys. So they are absolute bullies.
This entire debacle was revealed on Fox News' Kennedy Saves the World podcast, where an insider disclosed that during the filming of Deadpool 2, Ryan's personal makeup artist was unavailable because she was abroad, just as any professional would be, having to take on other projects from time to time.
Ryan Reynolds on the Enneagram is a psycho. That's what he is, just a psycho. His number is psycho.
Instead of hiring another makeup artist, which would have been an easy solution given the thousands of makeup artists in Hollywood, Ryan lost his temper. He threatened her, saying that if she didn't return, she would never work in Hollywood again.
Ryan Reynolds had to do some reshoots for the movie. His makeup artist was out of the country working. Ryan Reynolds threatened to fire the makeup artist off the rest of the film and the reshoots they had to do, and also said, if you don't come back and do my makeup for these reshoots, you will never work in Hollywood again.
Excuse me, has he somehow become a studio executive? Is he now running 20th Century Fox? Who granted him the authority to blacklist someone from the entire industry over a mere scheduling conflict? The most ironic part is that while Fox executives were clearly frustrated, they had no choice but to comply since Reynolds had already seized complete control of the project. This man was issuing career-ending threats over something as trivial as a bit of powder and contouring. Just imagine the sheer magnitude of ego and narcissism required for that. And honestly, it shouldn't come as a surprise. After all, this is the way Ryan Reynolds operates.
No one knew who he was beforehand. Everyone knows who he is now. If he is a smart sociopath, he'll work that to his advantage.
Ryan Reynolds has crafted his career around the image of a laid-back, easygoing, and humorous guy. But as soon as he steps behind the scenes, he morphs into a full-fledged Hollywood tyrant. A perfect illustration of this is the Deadpool franchise. The original Deadpool was directed by Tim Miller, who gave the film its unique vision and tone. However, by the time Deadpool 2 came around, Tim Miller was out. Why? Because Reynolds demanded absolute control over the project, sidelining the very director who had brought the character to life.
Ryan used his nice pool character in Deadpool and Wolverine to mock Justin Baldoni.
Miller later confirmed that Ryan Reynolds wanted total control and wasn't willing to compromise on any decision. In other words, Reynolds became like a big child, unwilling to meet halfway, and ultimately pushed a real director out of his own movie.
Blake Lively, her brand, Ryan Reynolds' brand, have totally been tarnished by this because the world now sees them for who they are. They cannot act their way out of this.
And let's not overlook how he interacts with his co-stars. If you think Ryan Reynolds only makes life difficult for makeup artists and directors, think again. He actively sidelines and humiliates actors who challenge him. Take Morena Baccarin, for instance, who played the love interest of Wade Wilson in the first Deadpool. In Deadpool 2, however, she was reduced to little more than a footnote. Why? because reportedly she had a disagreement with Reynolds on set, and Ryan clearly has no grasp of how to manage conflicts in a professional manner. Instead of addressing the situation with maturity, he ensured that Moreno was completely excluded from press events, promotional tours, and even removed from all group photos at premieres. If you'd watched the red carpet, you might have thought she wasn't even in the movie at all. But this is the modus operandi of a power-drunk Ryan Reynolds. He picks fights, then erases anyone who dares to challenge him. And this toxic behavior wasn't confined to just the Deadpool cast. TJ Miller, who portrayed Weasel, also spoke out about how Reynolds was genuinely unpleasant to him on set, and it wasn't just a joke. This guy's a comedian, and even he couldn't pretend Ryan's behavior was in any way funny. He directly admitted that Reynolds was unreasonably mean, not as part of some bit, but in a purely rude and hostile manner.
Deadpool, where he said, let's do one more take. And everyone was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. And then as the character, he was like horrifically mean to me. But to me.
Cathartic.
Imagine being so intolerable that even fellow comedians can no longer ignore the sheer lack of professionalism in your behavior. Sources claim that Ryan Reynolds subjected TJ Miller to public humiliation on set, reducing him to nothing more than a punchline in front of the entire crew. Reynolds reportedly reminded Miller at every opportunity that he was merely a side character, not a star, effectively stripping him of any dignity in a blatant power play. Such conduct is not only unbecoming of a professional, but demonstrates a disturbing disregard for respect and collaboration in a creative environment.
So he was like, you know what's great about you, Weasel? You're not the star, but you just, you do just enough exposition that it's funny, and then we can leave and get back to the real movie.
What's particularly striking is how openly Ryan displays his control issues, as though he doesn't even try to conceal them. These tendencies have surfaced repeatedly, even outside of Deadpool. Take Rebecca Ferguson, for instance, who had a deeply unpleasant experience working alongside an insecure and volatile actor. Although she never directly named names, if we connect the dots, the film in question was Life, 2017, where her co-stars were Ryan Reynolds and Jake Gyllenhaal. Since Jake was focused on his work, all the attention shifted to Ryan, who came across as the epitome of an angry, egotistical figure. Exactly the kind of person Ferguson had to endure on set.
A film with an absolute idiot of a co-star. And this human being was being so insecure and angry because this person couldn't get the scenes out. And I think I was so vulnerable and comfortable.
Rebecca Ferguson disclosed that she felt so uncomfortable on set that she outright refused to act directly with this individual. Instead, she insisted on performing her scenes with a tennis ball, allowing her to do her work without having to acknowledge his presence. Just imagine the sheer level of toxicity required for a co-star to refuse to even share the frame with you. This is an entirely new dimension of unprofessionalism. The situation took an even darker turn when Ferguson shared her experience publicly and received calls from her colleagues cautioning her that she had crossed a line. They warned her that she had gone too far by exposing the behavior, revealing just how deeply ingrained this toxic environment had become.
The next day I walked on and I said, you get off my set. This is the first time I've ever spoken. I remember being so scared. And I looked at this person and I said, you can F off. I'm going to work towards a tennis ball. I never want to see you again.
She was merely speaking the truth about a toxic work environment, yet she was treated as if she had committed treason. This is the very mechanism through which Hollywood shields its worst offenders, silencing the victims and enabling powerful actors like Ryan Reynolds simply to avoid rocking the boat. In the process, Ryan is given free rein to continue throwing tantrums and treating people like trash, without facing any consequences for his behavior. And let's not overlook what happened with Jake Gyllenhaal. Ryan and Jake were once incredibly close, often seen in interviews together, sharing jokes, and embodying the picture of Hollywood best friends. But the narrative has shifted dramatically. When Jake was recently asked about Ryan, he immediately shut the conversation down, offering no response and visibly irritated. When the interviewer pushed further, Jake coolly remarked, "I don't have anything to say about him." This isn't just a typical reaction between friends. It's the response of someone who's been worn down by the constant drama and manipulation, someone who's had enough of the toxicity.
Words for Ryan, seeing as the next time we talk to him, he will be seeing that.
I have nothing to say to him.
Anyone who has worked alongside him and dared to speak out has consistently painted Ryan Reynolds as controlling, rude, and insecure. This behavior has been noted across the board, from makeup artists and co-stars to directors and even his ex-wives. The evidence is irrefutable. Ryan Reynolds is far from the nice guy persona that Hollywood has carefully crafted for him. In truth, he is a self-absorbed, power-hungry bully whose toxic behavior has now been thoroughly exposed, shattering the carefully constructed image of the charming, funny actor.
You have an ongoing feud with Ryan. You know that guy. What's it gonna take for him to actually be BFFs with you?
Well, I mean, in truth, there was a time in which
Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds were once the epitome of Hollywood's bromantic ideal, constantly seen together on talk shows, sharing laughter, inside jokes, and projecting an image of two inseparable figures, almost as if they were mirror images of each other. But everything shifted with Life 2017, and suddenly, Gyllenhaal appeared to have severed all ties with Reynolds. By no ties, I mean an absolute and deliberate avoidance, no interaction, no acknowledgement, and a conspicuous refusal to even pretend that they had ever shared a friendship. This is far beyond the realm of a simple falling out. Something profoundly deep and undoubtedly painful must have transpired between them to cause such an extreme fracture in what was once a tightly knit relationship.
And it's pretty obvious that he's not joking about not being friends with Ryan Reynolds anymore.
Jake Gyllenhaal's response when asked about Ryan Reynolds was a chilling and deliberate rejection. His entire demeanor shifted, his face dropped, his energy soured, and he flatly declared, "I don't have anything to say about him." No forced smiles, no attempt at Hollywood politeness, just an unmistakable act of dismissal. Gyllenhaal isn't the type to indulge in celebrity drama. This is the same individual who, after being publicly dragged for a decade in Taylor Swift's song, kept quiet and chose not to engage. But when it came to Ryan, even the most basic, polite response seemed like too much. The rumors surrounding Reynolds are impossible to ignore. He's come across as unbearable, jealous, and toxic, and Gyllenhaal has clearly peeled back the curtain on his so-called nice guy persona. The truth is out, Reynolds' facade has finally been exposed, and Gyllenhaal, it seems, has had enough. And if there's one thing Ryan Reynolds despises more than not being the center of attention, it's when he can't control the narrative. Let's set the record straight. His entire career rests on sarcasm, but sarcasm isn't a personality. And it sure as hell isn't genuine humor. This guy isn't a comedic mastermind. He's just someone who realized that if he delivers his lines in a deadpan voice and flashes a smirk, people will automatically assume he's hilarious. But here's the twist. Those who've worked alongside him are no longer falling for that superficial act.
I'm really bad at
keeping a straight face around TJ Miller. Everyone knows that on our set. We lost days to me. Yeah.
TJ Miller, who actually grasps the essence of real comedy, didn't just criticize Ryan Reynolds for being a typical prankster or an endless source of jokes. Instead, he went further and exposed the darker side of Reynolds' humor. Miller pointed out that Ryan doesn't joke to entertain or uplift. He uses humor as a weapon to degrade others, to make them feel small. This isn't just a comedic style, it's a display of arrogance, a strategy to put others down under the guise of wit. Reynolds' so-called humor is just a mask for his condescending, self-important attitude. And the story doesn't stop there. Scarlett Johansson, his ex-wife, also called him out in exactly the same way he behaved in their relationship. She described Ryan as passive-aggressively jealous, a polite way to hint at his insecurity, controlling nature, and unbearable behavior. When you consider that after marrying Scarlett, Ryan immediately entered into a relationship with Blake Lively, it's not hard to see that his fragile ego couldn't handle his wife's career success, especially when his own career was struggling. And let's dive into the fact that Quentin Tarantino, a filmmaker held in the highest regard, didn't just lightly throw shade at Ryan Reynolds. He obliterated him and his Netflix-driven money grabs in an interview. Tarantino didn't just toss a casual remark. He outright dismissed Reynolds' entire career. His words were clear. Ryan Reynolds has made $50 million on this movie and $50 million on that movie. I don't even know what those movies are. Have you seen them? What Tarantino was really saying is that Reynolds is raking in millions for films that hold no cultural significance, no depth, and no lasting impact. He wasn't just pointing out that Reynolds' projects were forgettable, he was exposing how irrelevant his work is in the eyes of one of the most celebrated directors in cinema.
I would not have done Deadpool 3 if they came to me and they were like, we want you to do Deadpool 3.
And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, Gerard Butler came in and delivered the ultimate knockout punch. When asked about Ryan Reynolds' film Free Guy, Butler didn't even bother to pretend he knew what it was. He bluntly responded, "I don't know what that is. I don't watch his movies." Picture this. After more than a decade in Hollywood, constantly pushing himself into the spotlight, promoting his every move, and yet, here are major actors straight up admitting they don't even recognize his work. To have your peers, the very people you share the industry with, openly disregard your career, there's no way to spin that. It's not just embarrassing, it's an undeniable slap in the face that Reynolds' so-called star power isn't as real as he'd like to believe. And it's not just actors, respected directors have openly dismissed him too. Take legendary filmmaker Chris Columbus, the visionary behind Home Alone and Harry Potter. When Ryan Reynolds tried to pitch his brilliant idea of a stoner reboot called Stoned Alone, yes, that was actually a thing. Columbus didn't just reject it, he annihilated it. Columbus, a director who actually respects cinema, didn't mince words. He called the idea an outright insult to filmmaking and made it clear that some classics should be left untouched. And that, right there, is why Hollywood's elite keep their distance from Reynolds. Think about it. When was the last time a director with real credibility expressed excitement about working with Ryan Reynolds? When did a major A-list actor, who wasn't contractually obligated, publicly praise him?
About myself, I've learned to love is...
The thing about myself that I've learned to love is insecurity. That's a real answer, yeah, insecurity.
Exactly. They haven't. Because Hollywood already figured out what the rest of the world is only now beginning to see. Ryan Reynolds is an insecure, self-absorbed, ego-driven nightmare who destroys every bridge he crosses. Let's be brutally honest. Even his most devoted fans are starting to see the cracks in his carefully manufactured persona. What was once perceived as razor-sharp wit now comes off as nothing more than smug condescension. His relentless need to dominate every project, once mistaken for creative passion, has become a glaring testament to his insecurity and obsession with control. And that meticulously crafted nice guy image, it's not just cracking, it's disintegrating in real time, unraveling thread by thread for the entire world to witness. At this point, it's not just Hollywood turning its back on Ryan Reynolds, even the public is beginning to see through the carefully crafted illusion. When the only people still defending you are corporate PR machines and a handful of blindly loyal fanboys, it's not just a bad look, it's the prelude to a full-blown downfall. And let's not ignore the biggest issue staring everyone in the face, Blake's own legal battle with Justin Baldoni. This woman has been tangled in court for months because this is one of the messiest lawsuits in Hollywood right now. And now, Fox News and Hollywood insiders have separately set their sights on Ryan Reynolds. This isn't just a power couple crumbling together, they're both facing their own separate downfalls, unraveling in real time.